People say to you, why did you leave your last job? Why are you thinking of leaving? And in your mind, there's so many images coming past. You know what I mean? Like the anger, the tears, your boss who's crazy, like the boring work, the desk overflowing, the weekend spent like watching the clock, desperately trying to commit, like do things before the deadline. And you're just like, well, I love my job, but I'm really looking for a new challenge. It's not true.
Hi, I'm Sophie Hannah.
Hi, I'm Anissa.
Hey, I'm Nushy Rose.
Hello, I'm Monah.
Welcome to episode 51 of Ethnically Speaking, the show where we discuss everything affecting the UK's highly melanated communities, from pop culture to current affairs and everything in between. We always keep it 100, and today we'll be talking about toxic positivity. Toxic positivity refers to the idea that despite emotional distress or difficult situations, one must always maintain a positive mindset. Psychologists have said perpetuating this idea of appearing to be okay or the view of the glass half full can have damaging effects on individuals, such as minimising the range of emotions that we go through as humans. Do you feel that you've perpetuated or experienced toxic positivity? Do you feel that the psychologist's claims are correct, that it has damaging effects on us as humans? Or are we simply being far too oversensitive and overanalyzing our feelings?
I have a problem with this term because I don't actually think, but I think that you can basically separate it into two things. So one type of toxic positivity is people who have an outlook which is good vibes only and maintain that sort of perspective on life that suggests that any type of negative emotion doesn't exist and kind of negate that existence, which actually isn't good for mental health. Park that for a moment. The part of it that I find kind of troubling, one might say, is what happens, why is it toxic if I tell you the truth? So, for example, say Monah, you came to me and you said, you've been in this relationship for 10 years. I've always hated your boyfriend, right? And he's always been kind of stingy or offensive, dirty, unclean, rancid, some might say, whenever we've met him, but you were in love with him and you say, I've broken up with this guy and I'm heartbroken. And I say to you, great, like plenty more men in the sea, you'll move on, don't worry, heartbreak happens to everybody. That to me is my honest opinion. But within this context, people would say this is an example of toxic positivity because I'm not sort of sharing your emotions. I'm not empathizing with you. But why should I have to, is it really worse for me to tell you the truth than me to pretend I'm sad, pretend I'm grieving your relationship that I always despised, just to appease you? Isn't it healthier for everybody if we're far more open about the way we feel and actually speak our truths? So I think actually this term is very dangerous because it suggests that everybody has a right to unload their emotional burden onto others, and that all of us have a responsibility to shoulder others' negative emotions, even when we completely disagree with them and think they're kind of overblown or foolish.
You're a tough cookie, man. You're a tough cookie, Nushy. I'd probably say I look at toxic positivity like, I think, first of all, that there is something to be said for positivity. I don't think all of it is toxic. I'm never going to be the person that's going to exhibit toxic positivity because naturally I lean much more to the half glass empty. Like, I'm definitely going to be more of a pessimist, 100%. And I've had to work on that over the years because, like, literally people are like, you got to be more positive. Like, not everything is going to be ending like the apocalypse. So it's never going to be me. Like, I'm happy to sit with the negative emotions. But there is something very powerful about positivity. Like, the inner dialogue that we say to ourselves is very, very powerful. Like, whatever we ruminate on in our minds, we will live out. If we tell ourselves that we're nothing, eventually you're going to start acting like that. You're going to have this kind of low self-esteem. Whereas if you start telling yourself positive things, after a while, it's going to come out in your actions. I think where toxic positivity for me really is an issue, and I probably disagree with what you're saying, Nushy, is that sometimes people just need you not necessarily to co-sign and say what they're thinking or feeling or their negative emotion is true, but to be able to sit in it and really empathize and sympathize with what they're saying. Because 100%. I broke up with this guy who we went back and forth for years. It wasn't a good situation, and it was really painful. And I remember by the end of the situation, when I finally decided to walk away, when I told my sister, she had no sympathy. She was just like, I told you it wasn't the one. You went back. This is what you get. My sister's not the empathizing type. She's not. She's just like, it is what it's going to be. It's going to be what it's going to be. That's her. But I have friends who are like they know that we've gone back and forth for years. They've all known that he wasn't the one that I should have ended up with. But they were like, I'm really sorry that you're hurt. Like, I can't invalidate that regardless, you are in pain. And these feelings are hurtful. And it's okay to kind of sit in that sometimes. And I think that's what toxic positivity does away with. It does away with recognizing the pain and the negative emotion that someone else is going in because of other reasons, which I'll come back to. Let me leave it to you later.
Yeah. I think the concept of toxic positivity is very nuanced to me, because I think it really depends on the person who's either exhibiting this toxic positivity, and also secondly, how it's being imposed on you. And the reason why I say that, because for example, with Nushy's example, she genuinely thought, thank God that you will do better. Like, and that was her as a person, and that may be viewed from the person who she gave that advice to. That person may be viewing that as toxic positivity, where that is Nushy's true feelings, or she might just generally be an optimistic person, so she generally leads towards the more positive side of no offense, may lead towards the more positive side of things. And so that's why it gets a little bit tricky to say, well, is this really toxic positivity, or was the person just expressing themselves, or are they not good at giving specific advice? Because some of your friends are good at giving really generic advice. Like, they can give you the headline advice, like, you will do better, just keep trying, positive thoughts, just keep pushing, keep applying for the job. It's like very generic advice, rather than so for example, if I gave you were looking for a job and you haven't found one, you're in the pandemic, you're in a rut, they'll just say, keep applying for jobs, just keep on. That's very generic, whereas specific advice would be, well, what's going on with your CV? Is there anything that you could change? So I feel sometimes it depends on who the advice giver is versus it actually being toxic positivity. But I will say, and the first step is acceptance, honey, is I have definitely perpetuated toxic positivity. I think I continuously do it.
I can see that, Anissa. I can see it. I can
Sophie,
see it.
I have to speak my truth. You know it. I am. But I think the reasons for why I am are slightly different from the reasons that I read other people are. But we will circle back.
I feel like with this whole toxic positivity, it's actually very subjective, and that's why it's so dangerous, because not all situations have the space for positivity. So it's very dangerous to have this. Essentially, what you're saying is suppress how you're feeling and keep it pushing. That's essentially what toxic positivity, getting mixed up. That's essentially what it's saying to me. Because if this is very extreme, if somebody's mum passed away and you were trying to look at the silver lining and saying, okay, well, you know what, count your blessings, at least you had her for 42 years, blah, 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 blah. Someone's mum's just passed away. Everyone's allowed to feel how they feel. And I'm a big believer in feel how you feel until you don't feel like that anymore. And kind of having these little, it could be worse, at least this, look on the bright side, is actually very undermining, and it dismisses the person's immediate emotions. In order for them to suppress it and keep it moving, what that does is so dangerous. It creates hidden triggers that they don't know. They're not able to grasp themselves fully, because you're not able to see yourselves in the worst of situations and the best of situations. That could lead to generational trauma. It could lead to toxic traits. It could spill over into relationships with your relationships, your friendships, parenting. It has very dangerous effects. I read this book, The Art of Not Giving an F, and it's so simple, because when I heard it, I was like, that makes sense. But it's the type of thing where you have to have it so simplistic to be like, yeah, it is that simple. Positivity wouldn't be possible without negativity. They coexist with one another. You can't have one without the other. Always pushing positivity, positivity, positivity. You only know you've had a good day by having a bad day. Otherwise, everything is just complacent. It's just the same. So having this wave of like, you have to be positive all the time, or if something happens, oh, well, the best way to do it is kind of like kumbaya and, blow it. And I'm not hating here because I do it, but I'm just saying, throw on a bit of Janae Aiko, sage that energy out, open the window and all of that stuff. Let me tell you something, yeah? God can only meet you halfway. If your prayers are not being backed up by action, you're actually praying into nothing. The same with the sage, the same with the positivity thinking. You can sit there and be as positive as you want. What are you doing about it? And sometimes healing is doing nothing. Exerting all your energy, running around in a circle, trying to do everything and everything. Everyone heals different. Sometimes people need to take a bit of a time out, step back and actually reflect. We're living in a generation now where people are trying to do less of the finger pointing and more trying to look inside and figure out who they are, trying to force feed this positivity down people's throat. It's not a bad thing to not be okay. It's not a bad thing to feel like, you know what, today I'm not having a good day. In fact, it takes a big person to be able to recognize that you're not doing okay instead of trying to be okay for everyone else. It's really, really dangerous. Depression is on the rise. Mental health is on the rise. People need to understand that suppressing this with this toxic positivity is really damaging to our community. I'm really not here for it. When I see quotes about, I'm here for good vibes and bad vibes can get out, that's subjective. What are you telling people? Let's take in a really impressionable audience. If somebody read that and said, I ain't got no time for bad vibes. Cool. What does bad vibes mean to me? I didn't do my homework on time. My teacher's telling me that I'm doing a detention. No, that's bad vibes. I haven't tidied up my room. My mom's told me to tidy up my room. No, that's bad vibes. My wife is telling me that we need to communicate more in our relationship. I don't agree with that. No, that's bad vibes. It's starting to perpetuate to other people now and be very dismissive. What you decide as negative is subjective. And if you have this mentality that you finding your peace disturbs mine, so that's negative, I can just exit out. That's very self-centered. Sorry, I feel like I've just spoken a whole lot, but it's just like so many things that's been in my brain because I'm just really not here for this toxic positivity. And I think it's all that we see.
Girl, that was like life lessons with Monah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
You went
there.
from generational trauma to like the prayers, God is going to meet you halfway. Girl, yes, I'm here for all of it. And I think just adding on to that, if I possibly can, because girl, you summed it up beautifully. I think a lot of the times why people have an issue with meeting someone where they are in negative emotions is because negative emotions are hard to deal with.
Yeah.
It is much easier to deal with a friendship, a parent, a sibling, a partner who's happy. Like negative emotions require more from us as people.
Yeah.
They require more from us in relationships. And if you're somebody that hasn't got that depth or that ability to grow in that way, you're going to try and say, oh, it's not that big a deal. Like, it's fine. Just be happy. Like, look on the bright side, because you're not willing to go there. And it shows a lack in that person that they're not able to kind of be there in those negative times, because life, as you said, is light and shade. You cannot escape dark moments. And I know when I've talked to people about things before, like things I've got an eating disorder, and when people have said like, oh, it's going to be fine. Oh, I'm having a down time with it at the moment. It's been a struggle. Really sorry to hear that. Hope it works out. And that it's just like, no, like maybe you just need to kind of sit and just listen and just, do you know what I mean? And it's difficult. And I think it's difficult as well, because I think people have to realize as well when they're going through difficult times that not everyone is going to be the person you can speak to. Like some people haven't got the emotional IQ to kind of really go there with you. And I think sometimes I'd say as someone who's a Christian as well, I've seen that in Christianity to the detriment of people, where we try to put God on things or count your blessings on somebody when they're going through a really difficult time. And I'm like, yeah, God is good all the time, but life sometimes is still hard. And we need to be able to just say, actually, no, you're going through, yeah, God is good, but this is a really difficult thing. And even he understands that this is painful and hurtful, if you believe in God, but that's just me.
Yeah. No,
I think, like, I agree with everything that all of you guys are saying, but I was just going to say, like, I think there are some, I'm just thinking about this now, which I hadn't thought before, which is, I guess there are some spaces which are almost like designed to be toxically positive. So, for example, although I'm saying, I have no empathy for certain situations, I also know that when a friend does come to me, of course, I'm not going to kind of shame them or ridicule them or ignore their message. Of course, I'm not. I'm thinking in more theory, like I'm just saying, like in theory, but in reality, no, I would never do that. On the other hand, I was like, actually, although I wouldn't do that in my friendship groups, in the workplace, I am completely guilty of it. And it's almost like I subscribe to that view as well. That's a sign of weakness to suggest, even though I know it's not true, that's a sign of weakness to suggest you're ever anything but on your A game, And so there's been times in sort of jobs I've had where I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm so bored by looking at spreadsheets or writing copy for projects I'm not interested in or doing whatever it is that I'm doing at that time. And people say, how are you? And it's almost like a game of one-upmanship, which not only have I participated in, but I've witnessed in pretty much every single place I've worked, apart from one. Anyway, but in that situation, you'll say, well, I went to the gym this morning, then I made myself this beautiful breakfast. I read the newspapers for 2 hours. People are like, really? Yeah. And then, I decided, after my gym, I decided to cycle to work. And they're looking at me like, that's obviously not true, babe. I'm like, no. Like, it's making small gains. And literally, while I'm saying this, yes, it's true. Have I enjoyed a moment of it? No. I'm just saying it because I'm subscribing to this thing. I want to make it clear, like, I'm this type of person. And this type of person in that context is forward-thinking, positive, so on. It's like, it's the same thing with job interviews. And actually, this is like an interesting thing because I suppose, on the other hand, how else would you do a job interview when people say to you, why did you leave your last job? Why are you thinking of leaving? And in your mind, there's so many images coming past. You know what I mean? Like the anger, the tears, your boss who's crazy, like the boring work, the desk overflowing, the weekend spent like watching the clock, desperately trying to commit, like do things before the deadline. And you're just like, well, I love my job, but I'm really looking for a new challenge. It's not true.
Literally, that was on the money with that. But Nushy, can I say, sorry, just on your work example, on your personal thing, do you think it's also layered in, I don't know if you were on this episode when we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, how women of colour are not allowed to be quiet or submissive at work. Do you think it's a part of that narrative as well? Or do you think it's just the toxic positivity?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Do you feel like you tried harder because you didn't want to be viewed a certain way? That's what I guess I'm trying to...
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that definitely also has a role, right? So I know, not in places I've been in for the last few years, but I know when I started my career, as an Asian, my role is to be submissive, like, be like, hardworking, all these different things, like the tropes that play into like Asian identity. If I disagree with something, I'm meant to stay silent. And I think in many ways, like it's beneficial early on in your career because people just want a lackey who'll do whatever you throw at them. And I completely subscribe to that role. I enacted it because I didn't know how else to navigate it. And I think that's not just because of racial identity. I think that's to do with age, being a woman, and sort of like not knowing. Would I still do that now? I mean, yeah, I still see myself, even in my current job, definitely. I'm like, hope he doesn't watch this show. But yeah. But yeah, 100%. In fact, I noticed it not in the way that this is almost a completely different discussion, but yeah, I noticed it completely in my current job because not in the way that I necessarily behave, but in the way that people respond to me. Or, it'll be things like I've been introduced in my current job. So I work as managing editor for an app. So head of content, whatever. And yet, I'll still be introduced as a mix between, what was it my boss said? A mix between Princess Jasmine and an Armenian gangster because I refuse to turn my Zoom on. And it's so much about race comes into it. Thank you. I'm like...
I don't even know what that means.
That's fine. Well, okay, so this is the thing, yeah. I didn't know what it meant either. And the guy who was introducing me to was like, what do you mean? And he was like, oh, I'm just describing how she looks because her camera's not on because, she's like slightly golden. And I was just like, what? Or like, okay, my surname is Rose. When I had my induction for my current job, I went there one evening to kind of learn what was going on. As I say, like a pretty senior role. And at the end of the interview, my boss goes to me, I did want to ask you at the first interview, your surname, Rose, is that an ancient Indian surname?
No,
And
sorry.
I'm like...
I can't. I actually can't.
I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? Obviously not. But anyway, back to the actual discussion. So, back to toxic positivity. Yeah, so the job interview thing, we've all been there, right? Like,
Yes.
you know, and you can't ever reveal...
Definitely been there.
I
You know, I think it is. I think it's because we have made positivity linked to success in this day and age. And I don't want to make social media the bad guy, because I don't think social media is. It has a lot of good qualities. But like, we talk about positive things. It's about going out, having a good time, looking good today. My relationship, I'm so happy. Like, these things are predominantly linked to positivity, positive emotion. So then we're not even making space in these arenas for the fact that actually life isn't always like that. And then we condition people to be like, if you're successful, we don't even want to hear about what you're going through. And I'll talk about this really quickly, but it was Kendall Jenner. So Kim Kardashian, she does Skims, like the underwear or the clothing line, and they did like a Valentine's Day advertisement, and she did it with Kylie and Kendall's the one who's at the top, the highest grossing supermodel in the world at the moment. And her body, like, she's very slender, very tall, and she posted a picture of herself on her Instagram, and people were just like, oh, I feel so depressed, look at her, blah, 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 her life is perfect. And she had to come out and be like, oh, my life isn't perfect, you know, I have tough days. And people were getting on her like, you're a model, you're this, you're that, you don't understand about other people's life. I'm just like, why are we telling her that she has to be positive all the time, or that there's certain things in her life that means that she can't experience anything negative? And all it does is make people have problems to suffer with, because they feel like even me saying something negative because I have millions in the bank and I look a certain way must mean that, well, my feelings aren't valid. And it's just another way that we cripple people's authenticity.
Yeah. The word the word there, cripple, is exactly what I was going to snowball off. I feel like robbing people of these negative experiences and force feeding this toxic positivity is crippling people, because it's robbing us of our skill set. We used to work in a nursery where you weren't allowed to say no. You weren't allowed to say no to the students, and the little kids, they weren't allowed to hear it. And I thought in my head, in this whole world, do you think you're going to emit the word no? They're never going to hear it. If you don't prepare them for now, what happens when they go to McDonald's and they want to get chicken nuggets and they get told, oh no, the chicken nugget machine, the ice cream machine's never working. The ice cream machine's not working. They'd have a meltdown if that's the first time in their life they've ever heard no, because they've been so mollycoddled and so positivity. When they hear that for the first time, they are going to crumble, because they don't have the mental capacity. They've never experienced this situation to develop the accurate skill sets as to how to navigate through these situations. Toxic positivity positivity plus positivity doesn't equal positivity. We're human beings. Our emotions range over different days. In the morning, I could wake up feeling top of the world. In the afternoon, I feel like a slug. In the evening, I feel like Jennifer Lopez. It goes up and down, up and down. And that's normal. That's how it goes. If you want people to feel one way all the time, if you want us to be robots, just say. If you don't want to hear about people's negative experiences and you want us all to have mental health issues and be depressed, just say. Because that's exactly what I hear when I hear toxic positivity. There's nothing positive.
Well, you see, I've sat back and I've listened to a lot of what everyone has said, and I can't necessarily say that I agree with most of it, is what I'll say. Yeah, I personally don't agree with most of it. I feel like there have been strong words used. Basically, I just personally don't agree with most of it. And as I said before, like, I'm a self-admitted toxic positivity, but I said my reasons, I guess, for why I've said toxic positivity is different from others, because I don't think I personally am toxically positive to other people, but when in regards to dealing with myself, then I'd say I'm toxically positive is the best way to explain it. And the reason why I said that is, like, sorry, I'm just circling back on everyone's points. Like, for me, I don't mind if somebody puts a quote up saying, you know, good vibes, or I'm only here for a good time, not a long time. Like, that's one of my faves. I don't mind when they say that, because my social media, the way I've curated my feed, is to generally be more positive. And it's a little bit like what you said, you guys were talking about having balance in life. I mean, my real life is tough enough. I don't want to go onto the internet to continue in the toughness. So for me, I specifically curate my social media. So that is my light while my life is the shade. Like I can have the balance, and that's what I've made it. And the reason why I said I'm self-admitted toxic positive, I never know this phrase. I'm not the girl to sit here and say, I will never say to you guys, I've had a bad day. I'll say, oh, I've had a crazy day. It's been a long day. I'm a little bit tired. I'm not feeling well. But I'll never say I've had a bad day. And it's not because I'm not in touch or not expressing or not healing from all my negative emotions or, you know, it's just because I personally don't feel like it has anything to do with anyone. So I wouldn't, it doesn't call for me to actually express it to anyone. So I can keep my negativity because I'm dealing with that myself or dealing with it with close ones. It doesn't have to be for anybody else. So that's why it's like, so when you see me, you can get the good version of me because I'm not, whatever goes on in my life that's negative actually has nothing to do with anyone. And so that's why it's like, it's just not for anyone. And I personally feel like sometimes people push you to like really, really like say, okay, well, this is why my life is breaking down. And I think sometimes that is toxic. And I'm just speaking like when I have meetings with my managers, appraisals, my number one question I hate to hear them say is, how are you feeling? It's kind of like, does it matter what I'm feeling? Because if I was feeling that bad, I would say it, but I don't need you to ask me how I'm feeling. Let's talk about the job, what task went well, what task didn't go well. My personal feelings are objective to this. And I will say as well, I know people say therapy. I have been to therapy and it only led to me lying to the therapist because I felt like I had to keep saying to her what she wanted to hear versus me saying it's not your business. It doesn't really have anything to do with you. I think people, if you are somebody who likes to express with people and like to have community in that way and like to share your feelings and all that kind of stuff, then that works for you. But I think if you are a more private person and you deal with your emotions in a different way, then I think then only giving the world positive vibes isn't toxic. It's just how you choose to express yourself and the access that you give others about yourself. So that's what I would say.
I would say though, Anissa, like I think that's very valid, and I think it's really great that we've got like a flip side to what we've been saying, so we can see both points of view. But would you say that's more down to you being a private person and not talk? Because you said that if there's something negative, you've got your people who you'll talk to, and I'm assuming that you'll talk to your twin sister about things if there's something that you're not happy about, but you're still expressing that somewhere. Do you know what I mean? I don't think the antithesis of positivity or the antithesis of toxic positivity isn't sharing your feelings with everybody all the time and just being this really, really down and everything is woe is me. It's just saying that those times when you're feeling it, I should be able to express that. Because I think what you're saying is that you're just a very private person. But I think also that comes with that is that, do you feel like it kind of keeps people at a distance because you're like, this is the Anissa you're going to get? And that Anissa, the other Anissa is for people who were like on the inner circle. And that's fine. But I'm saying you're keeping that for someone. Like you're going through that with someone.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It's definitely a purposeful thing to keep people at a distance. And that is just the way I prefer to live my life. Like, I think I have such a good time with people, but they don't need to know my business. It has nothing, it's not one or the other. And I think it is a little bit of a default. I don't want to keep harping on the twin bag, but it's a little bit of a default because it's like, you know, I have a twin sister. So I have a confidant, I have everyone to say anything. Why on earth would I go to a stranger on the street and say anything else? Like, that is literally what I think in my mind. And it's interesting that you said that, Sophie, because I guess I didn't even see me speaking to her as an expression because I usually just see us as one in the same versus a different person. So that's a whole other issue, but let's move on.
No, but it makes sense. And I guess for people who aren't multiples, it's just a very different dynamic to this person who basically, we were one at one point. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it brings layers.
I think you've ended it amazingly. Like, we could go on and on and on about all of this. But
thanks for listening and watching to Ethnically Speaking. Let's keep the conversation going. Have you experienced or perpetuated toxic positivity? Let us know in the comments below. If you want even more from us, don't forget to subscribe to our email list and get extra ethnic delivered to you once a week, straight to your inbox. If you would like a summary of everything we've spoken about today, head over to unitedmelaningroup.com/ESO51. The description is in the link below. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, give this a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Ethnically Speaking will be back on Friday, but until then, wear your masks, wash your hands, keep your distance, and most of all, stay safe. Bye!